Hi everyone, this is Jen and you're watching BPD Woman. In today's video, I'm going to discuss grief and mourning the loss of your childhood and why and how it relates to your BPD and the differences that it can make in your adult life. In this video, you're going to learn why you feel alone or empty in life, which is also a huge characteristic and a core component of the DSM in diagnosing those with borderline. You're also going to learn how to stop feeling alone and develop a new life for yourself. And you're also going to learn and discover a little bit of the feelings such as jealousy, rage, anger, and sadness that go into seeing other people with their families. Let's get going. You can help my channel by liking, subscribing, sharing, and commenting below on this channel if you have BPD, CPTSD, or just find that you're a highly sensitive person. You will find that I offer you positive solution-based approaches to recovery and useful insights that can actually make a difference in changing your behaviors and recovering from the maladaptive ways of life and patterns of thinking that you've been using and choosing, and replacing those with effective, more calming, more effective methods of going about your life. I was diagnosed with BPD 20 years ago. I think I have lived with it for 30 years. And in those last 20 years, I have done about 6 rounds of DBT. I've done workbooks. I've done one-on-one therapy, group therapy. I've read every major book. I've done the homework. I have a YouTube channel. I watch other people's YouTube channels. You get it. I'm committed to making my life more effective and more healthy. If you're a family member or just someone else who's interested in these types of topics with positive solution-based approaches to recovery, which is what I focus on, then you will find a playlist for you to get started, which is entitled BPD Tips for the Family. While I am not a psychologist or a life coach, I can answer one very, very important question that those folks cannot, which is, what's it like to live with BPD? And in doing so, I can offer the nuances of what it's like to live and how to actually apply these DBT skills into your day-to-day life, along with the therapy and the knowledge that I have gathered from DBT courses, which I do highly recommend. Please definitely seek out a professional and use this channel to supplement along the way. If that all sounds good to you, let's keep going. So today I want to talk about BPD sadness and mourning. Recently, I did a video on BPD relationship grief, so check that out. This is probably a nice companion piece to that video. And one of my most popular videos was object constancy in BPD and why you worry and catastrophize. And that video will also be a really great companion piece to this video. So press pause, go watch that video, come back, or watch that video later, but you will find that they're very helpful. Object constancy is the ability to essentially know that someone or something is going to be there consistently in your life without actually having to verifiably see it or it be in front of you the whole time. And that's very much what the point of the peekaboo game is, right? And you know, your mom or your dad would play peekaboo, and it seems like an innocuous, childish game, but essentially what it's doing is that it's learning to build trust in children, that even though you can't see mom, she's still here. And this is a life lesson that people learn as they get older, and so it allows them to feel comfortable in trusting that someone may not be answering their texts right away, but that they will answer them sometimes. That your boyfriend or your girlfriend may go on vacation, but they're still thinking of you and they love you and they will be back. That even though your spouse or your roommate hasn't arrived home at their usual time, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're, lying dead in a ditch. And the worry and the instability and the absolute sometimes terror and panic that comes with this lack of object constancy in your life, or essentially object constancy is built through patterns of trust and regularity. And if you grow up in an environment like I did, which was traumatic and chaotic and unstable, and there was all sorts of characters walking in and out of the door at all times, then you did not develop this stability pattern. Instead, you got really super used to an instability pattern. And along the way, especially if you were like me, you lived in a abusive environment, a really abusive environment, sexual abuse, physical abuse, watching domestic abuse, being exposed to alcohol and drug abuse, being exposed to poverty or financial crises. You know, there's so much talk about PTSD, and, you know, I think it's a little bit oversaturated in the military community. Oh, PTSD, PTSD. And it's not to take anything away from those folks, but military and police, while they absolutely go through traumatic experiences, they're a lot lower on the PTSD rank insofar as numbers. And the biggest group of people that, and look this up for yourself, verify for yourself, but the biggest group of people that are actually affected by PTSD are children. And if you're a child, if you're a 5-year-old child compared to a 35-year-old soldier, which one of those persons do you think actually has the ability to process those emotions, name those emotions, handle those emotions, and seek help? Well, obviously that answer is very clear. And so there's a lot of this trauma and instability that grows up in your life. Then you reach adulthood. And then what happens? What happens is you grow up as an adult and you're thrust out into the world. And now you have to do all sorts of adult things like paying your rent or your mortgage or managing your bills or feeding yourself or showing up for work. And, you know, you get out of these traumatic environments and you don't just get better. You know, you just don't suddenly turn into a healthy adult. You know, when I left the house, and when I really left the house, I was about 20 and I was in college. I kind of had a nervous breakdown. So many emotions overwhelmed me. And that is very common because when you leave a traumatic environment, those emotions, those floodgates enter in, because when you're actually living through the trauma, you have to find a way to survive. You have to find a way to cope. You know, there's not a lot of time for processing emotions. And when you're a child, you don't even have the wherewithal to know what is happening. Is it right? You don't have a baseline to compare it to. You're just trying to survive. And then when you get out, you are just sort of like, ugh. You know, it's sort of like trying to escape a burning building, which has happened to me. You are just trying to get out to safety, right? You're not thinking about the repercussions. You're not thinking about the stuff that you left in the building. You're just trying to get out and survive. And then once you get outside and you're like, okay, I'm safe, I'm out, I'm okay, then all of those things that have been holding, that your body and your mind has been safely keeping from you, come out. And I don't mean repressed memories. So then you find now that you are in states of maybe alcohol abuse or drug abuse, or you are cutting, or you are you have an eating disorder, you're having a pattern of really unstable relationships. Perhaps you chose the first relationship that came along and you got out because it was an out for you to get out of your house, right? And these things all happened to me. And I didn't really realize that I didn't really understand, I don't think all the pain hit me until I was at least in my 30s. You know, everything that I had been able to start processing by going through therapy and groups, through the things that I could see comparatively in other families. You know, I mean, when you get out of your environment, I mean, really, when you grow up, that's all you see day in, day out. And then when you get older and you see friends, or, you know, you see it played out in TV shows, or you read books or what have you, you hear people do interviews, you begin to realize more and more like how really messed up and abusive of an environment you came from. And many emotions came over me. Obviously, there was panic, and there was PTSD, and there was cutting, and there was anxiety, and then I was abusing drugs and alcohol. And then And I believe that, I chose those substances because those were my coping mechanisms, much the same way cutting is a coping mechanism for that release of that pain. Cutting for me actually gave me relief. So then though, when I kind of was able to start, I put away the alcohol and I was just left with the emotion. I really had to begin processing things. And I felt, and I still feel, very adrift, a boat without an anchor. And for me, the anchor would be the family. The anchor would be the roots. The anchor would be something that I could always consistently go back to if my boyfriend didn't work out, or my friends left me, or I got fired from a job. The rock. Some people call it the rock or the foundation or the stability. And for many people, that's different things. But in the context of this video, we're going to talk that's about family. And for a long time, I tried to keep my family in my life and tried to work through my mental health issues. And long story short, that combination just didn't work because I was trying to keep a part of the family, or all of the family in my life, while trying to recoup from the wreckage that family caused, and then also try to adapt new patterns. If you're trying to lose weight, you want to set yourself up for success, right? You develop a routine, you put in place certain eating patterns or exercise patterns, and then you try to stick to them. Well, you would probably also try to remove higher fatty foods, or you would try to limit the amount of triggers or things that might lead you off. Maybe you start eating out less, things like that. Maybe you walk instead of take the bus. Well, for me, taking the bus and taking the chocolate cake out of the fridge is akin to that I had to cut out those people. And it's not because I didn't give them many chances, but what I did realize is that all of the chances I was giving them had a direct correlation to my failure after failure after failure with my recovery. And that's because it kept opening up the wound. And there was no way to get better, more effective, adapt healthier boundaries with that family. And that is sad. And that is a loss. And I could feel that was a loss because for so long I didn't want to lose them. I wanted them in there. I wanted them to be a part of my life. I wanted to have a family. Everyone else has a family. Why can't I have a family? But once I finally, and it took decades, wrestled with the back and forth of keeping them in, giving them a chance, going no contact, waiting a couple of years, letting them back in, being let down again, over and over and over it went. I'm not saying that families can't change or dynamics can't change, but it really takes a super conscious effort, and people have to really begin respecting your boundaries and your wishes. And if they haven't done that for a few decades, chances are pretty slim that they're just going to suddenly overnight do it. So I finally went no contact, and now I have been no contact with my father for at least 15 years, and with my mother, I think it's about 6 or 7 years. She tried to call me recently. She didn't leave a message, but I didn't answer. But okay, so 7 and 15 years. Now, that's really sad. And there were a lot of things that I did to try to replace this mourning and this loss. And now I'm going to tell you what those things were, how I tried to heal, and the solution. I will give you the solution at the end of this video of what I was able to do to move forward. My first tip here is to really mourn that childhood that you lost. And, there are many different ways to do this. I mean, if you looked at a 5 or a 6-year-old before, just go out on the street and you'll see somebody, with their kid, and, you'll be like, oh, how old's your child? And they'll be like, oh, 5. Then think to the time when you were 5 and you were witnessing your mom be hit by your dad. Look at that little kid. That kid is so small. Feel for that 5-year-old within you that had to be abused or be invalidated or be dismissed How sad is that? And you want to mourn that for that child. You don't want to just shove it away. It didn't really affect me. That will only last so long. There will be no real way for you to therapeutically move forward if you don't really acknowledge that loss. And for me, the way that I did that, it was a lot of things over time, but just a good way to start is to say, I really feel sad for that little girl inside Jennifer. She really, I feel that makes me hurt. That makes me cry that had to happen to her. Validate it for yourself. Validate that experience, because that's so much of what BPD is, right? It's grown out of invalidation. You can't trust your perceptions and, your feelings. You feel loss, you feel trauma, and the first thing is to really mourn that childhood. Now, how does this mourning or loss actually relate or play into developing BPD, and what's the criteria there? Well, a DSM is a DSM marker of diagnosing borderline is chronic feelings of emptiness or loneliness. Now, where do these feelings of emptiness or loneliness come from? Well, I think first you have to identify the answer to this following question, which is, where does a sense of fulfillment come from? Obviously, the things that you learn in childhood are meant to teach you self-awareness, to identify your feelings, to be able to communicate those feelings safely, to be able to acknowledge your experience, to be able to have boundaries put up. If you don't have that, you're kind of like without a compass a little bit, and then you grow up, and then your life is sort of compounded by these problems of this loneliness. And so you feel a chronic sense of loneliness. And I think for me over the years, the sense of loneliness is that I, again, don't have that anchor. I had one family member and she's passed away, but I think without her, I honestly don't think I would have had much of a chance growing up. I don't think I would be really where I was today without the momentum of my grandmother behind me. But I feel a constant sense of loss that cannot be replaced by anything. It cannot be replaced by someone else's family. It cannot be replaced by a new family. It cannot be replaced by friends. It cannot be replaced by pets. It's a loss that just cannot be replaced. If my dog dies tomorrow, I can't replace that feeling and that connection. I could look for another kind of dog. I could look for another kind of connection, but I'm always going to mourn that loss of my dog that I love so much, right? So the first thing here, or the second thing here really, is to acknowledge that this loneliness comes out of, for me, feeling adrift in that ocean and not having that anchor. And in turn, you grow up and you feel lonely. You feel a sense of emptiness. You feel directionless, a bit of a wanderer. Let's go to number 3. Now that you're an adult and you're developing relationships and friendships and you're beginning to get feedback from others, now that you're out of this environment in your life, you're probably going to be getting a lot of feedback about how your relationships are playing out. Or you're going to start, if you're tuned in and conscious enough, you're going to see, strings of codependency pop up. Now, why is that? Well, again, and this is very true. It was very true for me. I have to constantly be on the lookout if I'm developing a codependent relationship with someone. Some people say that codependency is a lack of self-love. Some people say that, dependency is based upon, this need to always feel needed or welcomed. And again, why would you want to feel needed or welcomed or enmeshed with somebody? Because you don't have, this goes back to number 2, because you don't have a solid sense of self or direction or belonging. You don't have that anchor. And so you're going to start looking for other anchors, and you're going to look for this person, and you're going to look for that relationship, and you're going to look for this drug or this feeling or this experience. And so this sense of, essentially codependency is, one person supporting, or sometimes both persons supporting, the immature or emotionally destructive behaviors of another. So a caretaker and an alcoholic, or someone who never has money, and someone who's always providing, right? And they both get something out of that relationship, and there's nothing healthy about it. It's an enmeshment. No one completes you. You're complete, okay? You get in a relationship, it's you plus one. It's not you, now you're 100%. There's no such thing. But this enmeshment makes you feel needed, right? And you've mourned this childhood. You are still looking for something to complete that. But the thing is that your vision will be askew because you're looking for things in the wrong place. And you've yet probably to accept that there's nothing that's ever going to replace that. I mean, that's literally why you have to start with that statement. Nothing will ever replace my loss. I will never have a mom. I will never have a dad, you know? And so you might find that you enter codependent relationships in order to feel needed or accepted. And generally, those types of people that are entering these codependent relationships with you, if they're not healthy people, they will exploit that. You know, they will take advantage of that. Oh yeah, they'll take your money. They will take your pampering. You know, I have so wanted just to be accepted and loved and be a part of a family that I overlooked a lot of things, or I ignored a lot of signs because I just need to be attached to someone's anchor, right? So if you are really properly mourning your loss, hopefully at some point you will recognize these signs and you will extricate them so you can give yourself a chance at true recovery. Let's go to the fourth point I'd like to make. Along the way, I felt a lot of feelings, and these are human feelings, but if you have BPD, you feel them longer, more intensely, with a slower return to your emotional baseline. And those are feelings of jealousy, sadness, anger, emptiness, rage. You may find yourself just in a pool of tears at major holidays, at your birthday. Why? Because those are generally times that are expected that families get together or they're there for each other, you know? I mean, even now, somebody may be like, oh yeah, like going to my mom's birthday, it's going to be really fun. Like, that makes me feel sad, you know? And for a long time, I didn't understand why I felt so angry at other people for having this, or why I felt so sad or jealous. But it's because that I was witnessing them have something that I didn't have. And you begin to make a lot of comparisons, right? They have this, I don't. She has a bunch of siblings and, you know, a dad who still gives her money, I don't. She was able to find a healthy husband and have a baby, and I haven't. Like, I keep making the wrong decisions with relationships. These comparisons, it's just like comparing cats and dogs because they're just different animals, you know? And your experience is going to be very different. And again, this goes back to acknowledging that, yep, I'm never gonna have this again. Like, my mom and dad, they're essentially dead, right? They don't exist. So what I have learned is that, and it's gotten easier with age, that first of all, you never really know someone's situation, you know? They may have a seemingly perfect family lifestyle, but underneath something really terrible may be happening. I mean, you see this all the time. Just tune into like crime TV or court TV or HLN or, you know, Investigation Discovery. They were the perfect family, but the dad lived in the basement and killed people. I mean, plenty of serial killers have had normal families with a wife and a child. Plenty of people that turned out to be serial rapists or abusers or gamblers, they had the perfect family. So, you know, making comparisons on any number of levels just isn't helpful, okay? For any number of reasons. So, just acknowledge that, listen, I don't know exactly what their situation is. And the key to kind of get away from making those comparisons is to feel okay with the life that you have. Okay, this is what I have. Okay, I am not married. Okay, I'm never going to be able to have my parents at a wedding. Okay, I don't have any siblings. I'm an only child. Okay. I I'm going to have to figure out a different plan for my birthday. I'm going to have to figure out a different plan for when I vacation. I'm going to know that I'm not going to be invited to family reunions. You have to expect these things as they come up. And again, with age and patterns over time, you're going to find something that works for you. You know, I spent my birthday and Christmas alone, and part of that, some of that was due to lockdown, but that was fine. I actually really enjoyed that time together. And that's because I'm more comfortable with the traditions that I've made for myself. And, you know, this is, you can kind of consider this a bonus fifth tip, is that you can create traditions and make meaning out of belonging or what family looks like on your own terms. And it does, again, it takes the courage to say, I'm never going to have that family and it will never be replaced. And I don't have the picture perfect family that I wanted. But now I'm going to make something new. You know, I have some very good dear friends. You know, I have people all over the world. I have cool experiences when I travel. You know, I have had to come up with solutions when I have been really sick. You know, I've been single without a family, and I went through major knee surgery living alone. I worked that out. I hired a part-time caretaker. I had friends help me out. I worked remotely, right? I had to figure these things out. I mean, and the more processes or examples that get put in front of you, like dealing with this sickness, or, you know, how to deal with your birthday, or, you know, when other people are gathering, you know, for a holiday and you don't have a family, like, what do you do then? You know, eventually you begin to get the confidence, like, okay, well, I handled that surgery on my own. Like, what else could I handle, right? It doesn't mean, you know, you build up this confidence and you create these own. I'm not sad. I'm not pathetic. I'm not crying. But that's also taken a long time for me to realize, okay, well, I just don't have this family. It's not coming back. It is a loss. I'll never be able to replace it. And now through therapy and time and some new alternative choices, I'm going to have to find a family dynamic and new traditions of my own. And it's important to remember that it's okay to mourn that childhood and that you can build a new life. You know, there are plenty of books on this, you know. Your childhood does not have to define your life. You could start over, you know. Let me know what you think, you know. Do you feel loss? Do you feel sad? Do you feel like you don't have the family you wanted? Let me know in the comments below how you've handled those challenges. My name's Jen. You've been watching BPD Woman. Please like, share, subscribe, comment below. And until I see you next time, my friends, in everything that you do, please be effective.